Arizona's Attorney General said it plainly. Cows in Saudi Arabia are essentially drinking Arizona water. A Saudi dairy company has been pumping unlimited groundwater out of the Arizona desert, growing alfalfa, and shipping it overseas to feed their cows. The water they're draining took 20,000 years to accumulate, and the people who live on top of it are watching their wells go dry and their ground literally sink. The reason nobody can stop them is a legal loophole from 1980 that left 80% of Arizona with zero groundwater rules. Follow the money through 25 facts that trace the loophole, the water, and the people paying the price. Arizona leads the entire country in alfalfa production, according to Reuters in 2023, and that might sound like a boring farm statistic until you realize that alfalfa is one of the most water-hungry crops on the planet. It's hay for cows. Farmers plant it across the Sonoran Desert like they're trying to green the surface of the moon, and back in the early 1980s, it covered about 25,000 acres in Arizona, climbing to 45,000 by 1997, according to University of Arizona records. You might think the last place anyone would plant a water-hungry crop is a state famous for being nothing but desert, but turns out that's exactly where they decided to put it. The heat means more harvests per year, the weather is predictable, and irrigation gives you total control over every single drop going into the ground. Proponents say the economics make sense because you can get a high number of cuttings in the desert and control your inputs. But nobody eats this crop. They picked the driest state in the country to grow the thirstiest crop imaginable, and they're feeding it to cows. Here's where the water actually goes. According to the U.S. Geological Survey's 2015 data, 76% of Arizona's water goes to agriculture, meaning farming takes roughly 3 out of every 4 gallons the state uses. A 2020 study cited by Sentient Media found that 79% of Colorado River water goes to alfalfa, which in turn primarily feeds cattle operations, the most emissions-intensive form of animal farming. If Arizona's water supply were a dollar bill, farming gets 76 cents, and your household splits what's left with every business, school, and hospital in the state. You'd think most of the water would go to homes and businesses in a state with over 7.5 million people, but the numbers tell a completely different story. Arizona is home to more than 7.5 million people who all rely on water for drinking, bathing, and living, and domestic use is a much smaller sliver compared to what agriculture takes. The people come second, the cows come first. Farming gets 76 cents on every water dollar, and your drinking water gets the leftovers. In 1980, Arizona passed the Groundwater Management Act, and it was ahead of its time. The law created active management areas, or AMAs, in Phoenix, Pinal, Prescott, and Tucson, where groundwater is monitored, pumping is tracked, and developers have to prove 100 years of water supply before building anything new. A 5th AMA was added later in Santa Cruz. In those areas, real estate agents must inform buyers about the current water situation, and the state can pause new groundwater pumping when data shows the aquifer is over-allocated. But the law only covers about 20% of the state. You'd think a groundwater law would protect the whole state, but to get the bill passed, lawmakers had to leave rural Arizona out of the deal. That compromise gave us regulated water in the cities and a free-for-all everywhere else. Nearly 80% of Arizona was left with no rules at all, and for over 40 years, nobody fixed it. They built a water law for the 20th century and left 80% of the state to fend for itself. Outside those active management areas, the rule is simple. If you own the land, you can drill a well and pump as much water as you want. No monitoring, no reporting, no limits, and no cost for the water itself. Arizona is the only state in the Colorado River Basin with rules this loose for rural groundwater, according to Inside Climate News. Paz County, where this story plays out, isn't in an AMA, which means everything that happens there happens without a referee. Holly Irwin, the Paz County supervisor, put it this way to Floodlight News. The way that the law is, if you live here, you own land. and you're allowed to use that water. You can pump and pump and pump. You'd think there would be some kind of limit on how much one operation can pump, but outside these zones, there's nothing stopping you. In most of Arizona, the groundwater is a free-for-all with no referee, no scoreboard, and no one keeping track of who takes what. And one operation figured out exactly how to exploit that. Under Arizona law, specifically statute ARS 11812, agricultural operations on 5 or more acres cannot be regulated by local government. The county cannot stop a farm, cannot limit its water use, and cannot even require monitoring. All the farm has to do is notify the county it exists. The statute also applies to railroad, mining, metallurgical, and grazing operations, which means a whole category of water-intensive industries is shielded from local control. Travis Lingenfelter, a Mojave County supervisor, described it to Inside Climate News as the Wild, Wild West, where you can drill as many wells as you want, as large as you want, and pump as much as you want without reporting it to anybody. He warned that the state is basically inviting a future public health crisis around water. You'd think the county could step in when a farm starts draining the local water supply, but state law blocks them at every turn. The county cannot stop a farm. The farm just has to say hello. Paz County has about 65,000 acres in alfalfa production, according to Farm Progress. That's roughly the size of Washington, D.C., all of it planted with thirsty hay in the middle of the Sonoran Desert. Google Earth data shows the specific area has been in production since at least 1985, but the scale has exploded in recent years as more corporate operations moved in. Today, just this one county has 65,000 acres in alfalfa, an area larger than many American cities. You'd think a county with only 16,000 people and a median household income of about $49,000 couldn't support that much farmland. But the farms aren't here for the local economy. They're here for the water. Paz County is far from a place where the average resident can spend $100,000 on a new well, and the farms know it. 16,000 people share a county the size of Washington, D.C., and most of it's growing hay for export to feed cows overseas. The Central Arizona Project Canal runs right through Paz County, carrying Colorado River water in a concrete channel that reflects the cloudless desert sky. The CIAP provides water to 3 areas in Arizona: Phoenix, Pinal, and Tucson, according to the CAP's own allocation maps. Paz County isn't on that list. You can stand at the fence and watch millions of gallons flow past your dying well, and you can't touch a drop of it. Holly Irwin, the county supervisor, pulled off to the side of the road near Wendon to show reporters the canal, and she stood at the fence staring at the water reflecting the blue sky. Paz can't touch it. You'd think living next to a major water canal means you have water, but just because you can see it doesn't mean it's yours. The water is right there, flowing past their drying wells, and they can't touch a single gallon. Foreign-owned private farms make up fewer than 1% of all farms in Arizona, according to the Arizona Farm Bureau. But the outcome of water extraction is exactly the same regardless of who owns the pump. A domestic corporate farm drains the aquifer just as fast as a foreign one, and the water doesn't care who's pulling it out. Familietti, the water scientist at Arizona State University, told Floodlight News that the depletion of the region is 100% caused by these big farms. You'd think the foreign ownership is the whole problem, but it's a symptom of a broken system, not the cause. Irwin told reporters that in her part of Arizona, the mom and pops aren't here anymore, and the big guys who can keep digging deeper and deeper are the ones who survive. The Saudi operation became the flashpoint because it's the most visible symbol of a loophole that anyone can exploit. Foreign farms are less than 1% of Arizona's agriculture, but 1% can drain an aquifer just as fast as 99. If you're from Arizona, you're going to want to hear this next part, because the next 8 facts trace exactly how a Saudi dairy company turned a legal loophole into a free water pipeline. Subscribe if you want more of these hidden money stories, because this is where the numbers start to get wild. In 2016, Saudi Arabia started a water conservation policy that banned green fodder cultivation, and the ban became effective on November 5, 2018, according to Arab News. The phase-out of green fodder cultivation became fully effective in 2019, according to agricultural research published by the Western Agricultural Economics Association. Saudi Arabia banned growing alfalfa because it was draining their own aquifers at a rate that turned the desert even less livable than it already was. They realized they were burning through fossil water to feed cows, and they stopped. Saudi Arabia is also planning to build a multi-billion-dollar livestock city project to meet growing demands for meat in the country, according to AGBI. You'd think Saudi Arabia would just keep growing its own feed, but instead they outsourced the problem. They banned alfalfa at home and started looking for someone else's water to grow it instead. Saudi Arabia banned growing alfalfa at home because it was destroying their water, so they found it somewhere else. Almarai is Saudi Arabia's largest dairy company. Founded in 1977, and it produces over 1 billion liters of milk every year from roughly 75,000 dairy cows, according to the company's own records and reporting by the Bullvine. The company started with about 4,000 cows and grew into a dairy empire that now produces 2 million liters of milk every day, feeding not just the Gulf but 20 countries worldwide. Their 2024 revenue hit 20.98 billion Saudi riyals, which is about 5.6 billion US dollars, according to Steady Pace. Harvard Business School even wrote a case study on them. You'd think a dairy company would be a relatively small operation, but this is a multi-billion-dollar empire that needs feed for 75,000 cows and can't grow it in its own country anymore. Almarai's revenue grew 7.2% in 2024, and the company keeps expanding. A $5.6 billion company that needs water it doesn't have, so it started looking for water it doesn't own. Fondomonte, a subsidiary of Almarai, moved into Vicksburg, Paz County, Arizona in 2014, according to reporting by Floodlight News and Sentient Media. They leased roughly 10,000 acres of state land in a deal worth about $48 million, which gave them access to the Ranagras Basin, a desert valley in western Arizona along the California border. Vicksburg is a tiny community, and Fondomonte set up deep wells, sprinkler systems, and started growing alfalfa across the desert floor. The green fields stick out like a sore thumb against the reddish-brown desert, with miles and miles of hay where there should be nothing but scrub brush. You'd think the land deal would be the expensive part, but the water underneath it was free. The company paid $48 million for the land and secured unlimited access to 20,000-year-old groundwater for nothing. They paid $48 million for Arizona desert land and took the water underneath it for free. Fondomonte grows alfalfa, cuts it, bales it, trucks it to port, and ships it back to Saudi Arabia to feed dairy cows, according to CBS News and Fox 10 Phoenix. The company doesn't pay for the water it uses. Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays put it bluntly, "Cows in Saudi Arabia are essentially drinking Arizona water. The alfalfa isn't feeding people. It's feeding cows that produce milk for a Saudi dairy company making $5.6 billion a year, and the entire operation runs on water that costs the company nothing." Fondomonte uses sprinklers to grow alfalfa in Paz County and exports it to feed dairy cattle in Saudi Arabia, according to Fox 10 Phoenix. You'd think someone pays for the water, but Fondomonte pays nothing. The company pays zero for the water, the cows drink it overseas, and the people who live above the aquifer get the bill. Fondomonte's wells have the potential to extract water at 64,000 gallons per minute, according to calculations by Paz County Supervisor Holly Irwin, who has been watching the operation for years. A typical washing machine uses 20 to 25 gallons per load, which means Fondomonte's wells pump more water in 1 minute than 2,500 laundry loads. Irwin told Floodlight News that the truck noise is deafening, with empty hay trucks blasting past all day long, ready to be loaded. Both sides of the road are green with unharvested hay, and a church near the operation had its well run dry years ago. Irwin has also calculated that the truck traffic has cost the county about $2.4 million in road repairs. You'd think there's a meter on the pump, but nobody is counting. 64,000 gallons every minute, and the only person keeping track is a county supervisor with a calculator. In 2023 alone, Fondomonte used approximately 31,196 acre-feet of groundwater within the Ranagras Basin, according to the Arizona Attorney General's lawsuit filed in December 2024. That constituted over 81% of all groundwater extracted in the entire basin that year. A single acre-foot of water can supply 3 single-family homes for an entire year, which means 31,196 acre-feet could supply roughly 93,500 homes with water for a year. This is happening in a county of 16,000 people, which means one company is pulling enough water annually to supply every resident 6 times over. Jay Familietti at Arizona State University told Floodlight News, "There's a lot of big straws sucking out the majority of the water. You'd think one company can't dominate a whole water basin, but Fondomonte took 81% of everything pumped. One company, one basin, 81% of the water, and a county of 16,000 people left fighting over what's left." A 2024 audit found that Arizona had been charging cheap rents to agricultural lessees like Fondomonte, according to 12 News in Phoenix. The state was essentially subsidizing the deal: cheap land, free water, and zero oversight. In October 2023, Governor Katie Hobbs terminated Fondomonte's state land leases after inspections found the company had defaulted on lease terms, according to the governor's office and the Associated Press. Governor Hobbs called it unacceptable that the farm continued to pump unchecked amounts of groundwater out of our state, according to Fortune. The governor's office conducted inspections and found lease violations, which gave them the legal basis to cancel the deals. You'd think the state charged fair rent for state land, but the audit says otherwise. Cheap land, free water, no oversight, and the state was basically running a giveaway program. When you ship alfalfa overseas, you're shipping water. Economists call it virtual water, and the concept is simple. The water embedded in a crop leaves with the crop, according to reporting by Mother Jones in National Geographic. National Geographic reported on this as far back as 2014, describing it as exporting the Colorado River to Asia through hay. U.S. groundwater is being shipped to China and Gulf states through hay exports, and the practice has been accelerating for decades, according to Mother Jones. The Colorado River is literally being exported to Asia and the Middle East one bale at a time, and the West's water crisis keeps getting worse while the exports keep growing. You'd think exporting hay is just exporting hay, but it's actually exporting water. When the hay leaves the port, the water leaves with it, and they just call it virtual water so nobody has to say what it really is. Stick around, because the next facts are where it gets real. The people who live on top of this aquifer are spending their retirement savings on deeper wells, and the ground is literally sinking beneath their homes. Subscribe for more hidden money stories, because what comes next is worse than anything you've heard so far. Most of the groundwater in Paz County is 20,000 years old, stored in aquifers deep below the soil, according to Floodlight News and Sentient Media. It's called fossil groundwater because it can't be recharged quickly by rain, and it predates human civilization by a wide margin. An aquifer is like a sponge. If you squeeze it too hard and too often, it compresses and can't soak up water the same way. And an overcrushed sponge may stay that way forever. If the water is used faster than it can be replaced, eventually it will be gone. Familietti called the groundwater situation a ticking time bomb in an interview with Floodlight News. You'd think the water refills when it rains, but this water was here before the pyramids, and it might be gone before your kids retire. 20,000 years to fill, and a Saudi dairy company is draining it in a single generation. And the rate at which it's disappearing is staggering. In Wendon, Arizona, the water table was 117 feet below the surface in 1946, according to Gary Sater, who runs the Wendon Domestic Water Improvement District. Today, it's 540 feet. That's a drop of 423 feet in about 80 years, which is the height of a 40-story building straight down. The district's wells now go 1,500 feet deep, and a private resident has to drill not just to where the water is now, but below that to keep the pump submerged. The district serves 242 connections, roughly 450 customers, and it's the only service in the region that pipes water directly to homes. Sater told Floodlight News, "The only reason to keep us here and to keep us alive is to have water, and if that's gone, this reverts to desert." You'd think the water table drops slowly over centuries, but it fell the height of a skyscraper in one lifetime. The water dropped 423 feet, and the cost of reaching it is burying families alive. Wendon has sunk 4 feet. The ground is literally collapsing as aquifers drain, according to Gary Sater and reporting by Floodlight News. When you pump water out of an aquifer, the pore spaces that held the water collapse, and the land drops, a process called subsidence, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Sater's wife owns a store in Wendon, and the ground has shifted so much you can see it slope when you walk in the door. He told Floodlight News that when he first moved to Paz County full-time in 2008, at least some of the farms were growing food for people. Now, monocrop alfalfa farms landlock the town. Subsidence is permanent. The aquifer may refill someday, but the ground won't rise back up. You'd think the ground stays put when you pump water out, but it doesn't. The ground dropped 4 feet and it's never coming back up. Arizona has identified over 3,400 square miles of land subsidence using satellite-based technology, according to the Arizona Department of Water Resources, which is larger than the entire state of Rhode Island. There are 170 miles of earth fissures across the state, which are cracks in the ground caused by overpumping, and a 1.8-mile crack south of Eloy in Pinal County is among the largest, according to the Arizona Geological Survey and the Arizona Daily Star in June 2026. These fissures damage homes, roads, dams, and canals, and they reduce property values. The survey classifies earth fissures as anthropogenic, meaning they're human-caused geologic hazards, not natural features. You'd think cracks in the ground are a natural feature of the desert, but they're not. We pumped the water out and the ground cracked open, and the state's own geological survey calls it self-inflicted. Tom and Eileen Wood have lived in Paz County since 1986, and they built their house in 1998 off the grid in the Sonoran Desert, according to Floodlight News and Sentient Media. Their first well, 400 feet deep, cost $10,000, but by 2011 the land had shifted and they needed a new one for $15,000. That well ran dry. Their third well cost $130,000, pulled from their retirement savings, and their daughter and son-in-law live across the road with a well that also ran dry and no money to replace it. Tom hauls water for them now, pay as you go, from the Wendon Water District. The water has disappeared, literally, from the area, Eileen told reporters. It just keeps going away. She added, "I understand you want to feed your people. I really do. Food and fiber is important to all of us, but so is that water resource. Once we lose it, it's not going to be replaced. You'd think drilling a well is a one-time cost, but the Woods are on their third. 3 wells, $130,000 from retirement, and the water just keeps going away. And the math gets worse when you look at what people in this county actually earn. Paz County's median household income is about $49,000, and the average property value is $117,600, according to Data USA. A new well costs $100,000 or more, which means many residents have spent more on wells than their homes are worth. Family Eddie told residents something nobody wanted to hear. You just spent $100,000 on a new well, but you're probably going to have to spend another $100,000 in a few years. Gary Sater at the Wendon Water District put the math in plain terms. In order to get this in balance, we need to reduce the water usage by 80%. There's only one way to do that: stop farming. You'd think the people who live there can afford to keep up with the falling water table, but the well costs more than twice the median income. The water is free if you're a Saudi dairy company, and it costs everything you have if you're a retiree in Paz County. In December 2024, Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays sued Fondamonte, citing nuisance because residents' wells were drying up, according to Floodlight News and AZPM. The lawsuit claims that Fondomonte's overpumping has drained the aquifer to the point where residential wells fail, and it seeks to hold the company accountable for the damage. Fondomonte asked the court to drop the suit, and their argument was simple. Everything they're doing is within the bounds of the law. And technically, they're right. The law allows unlimited pumping. The law shields agriculture from local regulation, and the law created this situation in the first place. As of May 2026, the lawsuit is still working through the courts, according to the Arizona Daily Star, and Fondomonte is still pumping on private land. You'd think a lawsuit would stop them, but the loophole from 1980 that left 80% of Arizona with zero groundwater rules is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Their defense is that everything they're doing is perfectly legal, and they're right. Governor Hobbs canceled the company's state land deals in October 2023 after her office found lease violations, and it hit national headlines. By March 2024, the governor's office confirmed that Fondomonte was no longer irrigating on state land in the Butler Valley, according to CNN and AZDPM. But the terminated leases only covered about 1/4 of Fondomonte's total Arizona holdings, according to AZDPM and Farmland Grab. Fondomonte still owns at least 3,763 acres of private land south of Butler Valley, plus a separate 3,088-acre lease, and they stopped irrigating on the state land but kept pumping on the private land. The Saudis haven't stopped pumping Arizona groundwater, according to Farmland Grab. You'd think canceling the leases fixed the problem, but the fix covered only a fraction of the operation. The company kept pumping on private land anyway, and the headlines moved on. Cows in Saudi Arabia are still drinking Arizona water, and nobody can stop them. Water hedge funds are now buying land in Paz County, according to the Parker Pioneer and Floodlight News. In one case, a hedge fund spent $100 million, all in cash, on land in the Wendon area through a shell company, and their plans could include pumping groundwater and sending it to Phoenix. The Saudis showed everyone the playbook, and now Wall Street investors are running it. In January 2026, Governor Hobbs announced new groundwater limits for Paz County, and the state is finally moving to regulate the Ranagras Basin, according to the LA Times and AZ Central. The Arizona Department of Water Resources began formal steps toward regulating the basin in November 2025, as reported by the Parker Pioneer. You'd think the Saudis are the last ones to try this, but the hedge funds are next in line. The aquifer has already dropped 423 feet, the ground has already sunk, and the fossil water that took 20,000 years to fill is already gone. The loophole from 1980 is finally closing, but the question isn't whether it will shut. The question is whether anything will be left when it does. 25 facts, one loophole, and an aquifer that took 20,000 years to fill. Which one surprised you most? Drop it in the comments because I read every single one. Subscribe if you want more of these hidden money stories, because the next state on the list might be yours, and the water underneath it might be disappearing right now.